Welcome to the Arizona State Library Archives and Public Records presentation on the destruction and transfer of records to the state archives, brought to you by the Records Management Branch and presented by me, Aeneas Santiago, the Records Management Specialist in our small unit. The Arizona State Library Archives and Public Records is a sub-function of the Secretary of State. The knowledge and processes for permanent records transfer were devised and outlined for us by our friends in the State Archives team. What I hope to cover today will be used by those responsible either specifically for the destruction or transfer of records within their state or local agency, or the records officer who is responsible for the supervision and management of those processes. We'll cover topics like what is needed to destroy records and when, the importance of a couple items in preparation such as our forms, the retention schedule, and otherwise, the importance of uniformity, standards, and review on the agency's end to ensure consistency, ideal practice for destruction and transfer, and how this process relates to the agency's records officer on file with us. We'll even give you a couple recommended destruction methods that are used on average by state and local agencies. I'm sure a few state and local agencies may be thinking right now, wait, there's a process for transfers and destructions? Yes, there is for both, and here's the key point. It is far easier to cover all the bases up front than to handle things piecemeal or on an as-needed basis. Establishing a clear, consistent process helps eliminate potential complications or unintended consequences before they arise. Destructions and transfers are two distinct processes, but they share the same foundational principles and preparatory requirements. Destruction applies to non-permanent records and is authorized only upon receipt, meaning submission of the appropriate form to us by the agency's records officer. Destructions must occur within a secure, routine, and documented procedural environment. Responsibility for destruction generally rests with the agency holding the record, although certain state agencies may use our services through a state-contracted facility. Transfers to state archives, by contrast, apply only to records that are expressly designated as permanent. These transfers are also authorized solely through receipt, via form submission to the state archives by the records officer. Before a transfer can occur, the agency must conduct a thorough assessment to ensure that the correct records are being transferred, that they are in a preservable condition, that they are eligible for transfer, and that all appropriate stakeholders have been notified. To establish and maintain a clean, defensible process, agencies must have the following in place. A records officer on file with us, also seen in our records officer presentation. Records listed on either our general retention schedule or an approved agency-specific custom schedule. A clear and complete inventory of records, also see the inventory presentation, or internal and external assessments, which we will discuss shortly. Submission of the appropriate forms to AZ Lapper or us, depending on whether the action is a destruction or a transfer. These elements represent the minimum requirements. To further streamline the process and make it as routine and unquestionable as possible, we recommend several additional best practices we've seen work well across agencies. Selecting a reliable third-party vendor for destruction is one of the most important, and we'll discuss that shortly. But creating an internal guide or procedure for staff handling records ensures consistency in submissions, smoother legal review, and easier movement of records. Regular reassessment of records, especially those that have met retention requirements or undergone changes in retention, is also critical. Equally important is record security, ensuring that permanent records and sensitive records slated for destruction are handled only by authorized, competent individuals within a centralized group as possible. Finally, completion is key. All relevant information and documentation should travel with the record so that its destruction or transfer resolves rather than creates future issues. If you're interested specifically in transfers between agencies, please refer to a separate presentation on the officer and records outlining that process. Let's take a closer look at the materials required for these processes. Some are provided by us, but others must be created and maintained internally by the agency. So the two most critical components that we manage are the official forms documenting destruction or transfer, and the retention schedules that determine when those actions are authorized. These schedules may be part of the general retention schedule or an agency-specific custom schedule, but both can be found on our website under the Records branch and Retention Schedules page. On the agency side, though, responsibilities include formally designating a records officer and updating that designation every other year, as explained in our records officer presentation. Agencies must also create, conduct, and maintain a records inventory. This inventory may include fields such as record type, applicable record series and their number, a detailed description, location, and volume or quantity. Most importantly, agencies must conduct an assessment grounded in legal, policy, and ethical considerations. Each agency approaches assessment differently, which makes it difficult to prescribe a single model. However, we will provide guidance and key factors to consider when conducting these evaluations. Let's begin with destruction, which applies to the vast majority of records an agency holds. Before initiating any destruction process, it is critically important to establish a strong foundation. While destruction is essential for maintaining an efficient workflow, it is not as simple as discarding records once they appear unused. The most successful agencies consistently begin with a comprehensive inventory of records. This cannot be overstated. If you don't know what records you have, you cannot responsibly destroy them. Once the inventory is complete, agencies should compare it against any legal or regulatory requirements that may affect those records, such as rules from DPS or court decisions towards criminal records, or water resources regulations towards water conservation. These external rules may classify a record as permanent, place a legal hold on destruction, or impose additional requirements. Agencies must also confirm that records are not subject to any open investigations, audits, or other legal constraints that would prohibit destruction. Next, compare your findings with the applicable AZ-LAPR or R retention schedule. If you discover discrepancies between the schedule and governing law, notify us so corrections can be made. If a record type is missing entirely, contact us so it can be properly scheduled. For destruction to proceed, the record must appear on an AZ-LAPR or R retention schedule and be applied to the correct record series. Selecting a trustworthy destruction method is also essential. Recommended methods include shredding, pulping, burning, and degaussing. Agencies may consult peer organizations to determine best practices or choose to destroy records in-house using a controlled group of staff. Regardless of method, accountability is a central concern. Finally, coordinate with the records officer to review and approve destruction, ensure uniformity across records formats, and evaluate whether any record should be considered permanent due to historical or significant public value. With these foundations in place, the agency can begin the destruction process. This includes having an internal policy or procedural guide, conducting routine eligibility assessments under the appropriate schedule, logging records on a certificate of destruction, and securing a trusted destruction method, whether in-house or contracted. Records must not be under any legal hold and must be covered by either the general or an approved custom schedule. The records officer must sign off on the certificate. All formats and locations of the records must be gathered, and the record must be confirmed as non-significant to the agency's history, operations, or public accountability. Once approved, the record may be destroyed in a manner that ensures it cannot be reconstructed or read. The agency must retain no copies, and the completed certificate must be submitted to us at Records Management. This represents the ideal destruction process. State agencies may note some procedural differences. Most commonly, state agencies using our services submit destruction certificates in anticipation of destruction through a state contracting facility. Agencies may also have additional requirements when working directly with that facility. We will provide further guidance or presentation on those processes as needed. At first glance, this process may seem labor-intensive. However, for agencies with established foundations, it becomes routine and efficient. Following best practices and implementing appropriate preparatory steps significantly reduces future issues, especially when multiple staff members are involved. Ultimately, we are not here to be burdensome or regulatory, especially when we stress the importance of our destruction forms. Those are there as receipt and to be obtained in the case of an audit, legal discovery, regulatory action, or public records request, in which the agency has to show it was disposed through legal notice to us. If your agency is unsure about its current foundations, we are available to assist and provide guidance. Transfer preparations largely mirror destruction assessments, but with greater emphasis on physical and digital preservation. Agencies must confirm that a record is truly permanent and supported by legal or historical justification. Even though permanent records represent a small percentage of all records, agencies should maintain clear internal guidelines for their care and transfer. Permanent records must be legible, intact, and in stable formats. A quality review, particularly from an IT perspective, is essential to ensure long-term accessibility. Remove damaging items such as staples or paper clips. Maintain a detailed inventory down to folder level, and use acid-free storage when possible. Note any preservation concerns. Agencies should notify all relevant stakeholders and coordinate with our archives staff and the warehousing technician to schedule pickup and assessment, maintaining internal communication regarding storage and access. As with destruction, agencies must first confirm that a record is designated as permanent on the general or an agency's custom schedule. Records labeled with long retention periods but not explicitly marked permanent cannot be transferred. Once preparations are complete, agencies must submit a transfer form available through preliminary contact on our website under the Archives branch. The Archives team will review the submission and coordinate pickup with the warehouse technician and the agency if the record is physical. For records outside Maricopa County, an archivist may accompany the warehouse technician. Records are verified against the transfer form, transported to our facility at 1901 West Madison in Phoenix, and then processed, uploaded through Archivera, and stored. Several common questions arise frequently about that. Copies do not have retention and should be destroyed when immediate value has been served. Records under legal hold must not be destroyed or transferred. If records are destroyed accidentally, agencies should revise procedures and submit a notice of destruction form. If records cannot be found on a schedule, contact us immediately. For sensitive or restricted records, attach handling instructions or work with us to note restrictions within the schedule. The archives team is flexible regarding format provided the file is accessible and unaltered. When in doubt, ask either us at Records Management for destruction questions or the State Archives team for transfers. Best practice for records destruction and transfers follows a simple formula. This presentation, plus our resources, plus agency responsibilities, is an efficient and defensible process. While some agencies may require additional steps or modifications, this framework reflects what has consistently proven to work best in coordination with our processes and security requirements. Thank you for viewing this presentation, and if you have any questions, please ask us on our website or send us an email at records@azlibrary.gov or for transfers at archives@azlibrary.gov. This presentation also accompanies quick tutorial videos on how to fill out each form specifically, which can also be accessed through us, as well as other presentation materials that may clarify certain areas contextually.